Hi, I'm Mitch Shoemaker, and today is day 72 of my doing 100 days of YouTube videos and focusing on my writing. So, yay, day 72. I actually did a little bit of work on my writing today before going to work, so my video is a little bit earlier today, which is probably a good thing. It's probably how I'm supposed to be doing things. I have kind of just randomly been doing things today. I have not sat down and actually done my to-do list for the day to cross things off. I think I did most of the stuff I put on my to-do list yesterday. There's still some things I haven't done. And yes, I'm still on my little ball, so I'm all wiggly. Sorry, I'm just having fun with my exercise ball. I think it's a good thing for me, but I move around a little too much. I probably should not do that while I'm doing my videos. Anyway, I did some writing, sort of writing. I was working on Modulea, the Wise One story. Again, I just went through and revised chapter 9, and I kind of fixed some of the margin things in chapter 10, but I didn't really do a whole lot of writing per se, so much as just reading through the chapter and seeing what minor changes I needed to make. And I did make some things so I wasn't quite as repetitious, because apparently I was very repetitious. And I think it was yesterday or today, maybe it's today, I used the word stupid quite a bit. And I was like, I don't need to say that word multiple times, and it's not really very nice. So I took it out. I took out 2 out of 3 of them anyway. And the third one was an internal thought by the character, not an external something that she was saying. So I think it's a little bit better anyway. Still probably not very nice, but she's 7. She's not very nice. Little kids just kind of randomly express whatever they're thinking, feeling, whatever, which is good. Anyway, not sure I'm writing it correctly for that age, mindset, whatever. I haven't been around 7-year-olds in a long time, so I'm just kind of making that up, which is what writing is just making things up. Anyway, so I did some of that, and I just kind of went through the chapter again. I think I'd made some previous revisions to show my mentor, because I had stuff highlighted in gray, and I usually highlight stuff in gray when I change it to send off for her to check it. So haven't sent that off for her to check it in a long time, and either I didn't get her responses back, or I didn't find her responses, or it was one of those things where she verbally said it was okay, and I just never went back through and unhighlighted them. So I did unhighlighting today, and maybe that's why there wasn't a whole lot of changes in there today. But I figured as long as I was sitting at my laptop working on some other things that I was doing for my writing group, our new chapter president was messaging me today because I'm secretary for the group, and asking me questions because the new year is starting, and I was like, yay! So I had to open up my laptop to get the information she was asking, and I figured as long as I was in my laptop, as long as I was sitting here, I would just go ahead and do my writing right now, so I don't have to do it when I get home from work. So one less thing I have to worry about, yay! And then I could just do my video before I go to work. I was about to just walk out the door and go to work and just not do the video, but then I was just felt impressed, I should do my video before I go to work. So I'm like, yay, I'm doing the video before I go to work. And then I was talking to my sister on the phone today. I love talking to my sister, but I was making some comment about ADHD. I've never been tested for ADHD or ADD, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think the hyperactivity is when you just you can't sit still, but the ADD is when you have attention deficit disorder and you can't focus on one thing for long periods of time, or you focus on multiple things. And my sister was telling me how she's not that way, and she really struggles with multitasking. And so, but she remembers growing up, and our biological mom would always give us multiple things to do at the same time. So it's we're always focusing on more than one thing. And so I remember that, vaguely remember that, but I don't ever remember that being an issue. So it's not something that just, it was just something we did. It's something that I just do. I didn't even remember basically that, that her mom did that. I was like, I didn't remember that. I I just do that. I just do projects while I'm watching TV. I have the radio going, dancing and singing while I'm cleaning because I can't just clean. I have to, or I'm making up some kind of story in my head while I'm doing things. I can't just do something. There's always something going on in my head. It doesn't just sit there. And of course, I bounce around from one thing to another. And eventually, I get everything done. I just keep moving from one place to another because I can't just stay on one project for a long period of time. So it's like, okay, I start this one, and then I stop and start something else, and then stop and start something else, and I get back to what I started with. And I do that with my conversations. I'm sure you've heard me do that when I do my videos, where I start with something and then I go full circle with the whole conversation. I'm like, and you wondered how this tied back into what I started with. So um, that was, to me, was kind of how my day went today, where I just kind of got up and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, so what can I do? So I started, and in all honesty, I was actually trying to crochet and play my games on my phone at the same time, which doesn't really work. But usually when I'm eating, I will play games or watch a movie or do something to have my mind occupied while I'm eating food. I can't just sit and focus on what I'm eating. And so I was having this conversation with my sister, and I was like, I don't know if I have that because I've never been diagnosed with it. But my sister was like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised because our older sister and one of our brothers does. And so I was like, huh, that's interesting. But it also gave me some kind of insight into myself with some of the things that my older sister posts about ADHD on Facebook, and just different ways that people think and how they process stuff. And I've read a lot of those things, and I'm like, ooh, I do that. Ooh, I do that. So I don't know that I do everything on every list that she's posted, but I do a lot of those things. And so I was like, oh, but it allowed me to recognize in myself. I know I don't process things right away. I know things always take longer than I think that they will. And I don't always, it takes me a while to adjust to things or to change things. And I am always, without even realizing it, I'm usually doing two or three different things at a time. And maybe that's why I like driving a manual car because I get to like shift gears and I get to use both feet and all of that while I'm driving. So it makes driving more engaging, and it gives me more things to do while I'm driving and still being a safe driver and paying attention to everything that's going on around me while I'm driving. So driving is fun for me because I get to be moving, I get to be doing, I get to be shifting, I get to do all of those things. So I enjoy driving, but that almost sounds like an ADD thing, ADHD thing. I don't know. I don't think I'm as, I don't think I have the hyperactivity thing. I'm not constantly having to be up and moving around to do things. I just like to have multiple things going on at the same time, which I hadn't really realized or thought much about. It's just, that's just how my brain works. But I guess for me, it was good to recognize that maybe this is how my brain works. And like I said, I sat down to my laptop and I went in to do one thing, and I was like, oh, let's do this. Let's pay bills. Let's do my thing. And as long as I'm here, I'll do my writing too. So it was kind of like, I can't just open my laptop and do one thing. I was like, okay, one thing isn't enough. There has to be more reason behind doing it. So that was kind of insightful to me to be like, oh, I have to do more than one thing. I have to find more than one thing to do. And it's a good thing for me. So I also think the whole, if I have ADD or whatever other disabilities, mental thought processes, I don't know that it's necessarily a disability. I apparently cannot talk or enunciate. I talk faster when I get excited, and then I slur my words. I apologize. Um, I need to do better with that as well. But I don't necessarily see it as a disability so much as my brain just works differently. And I've learned that my brain works differently. I don't process things the same way other people do. So I'm learning to be more gentle with myself, more understanding. And I know there's lots of research and other things, not that I will ever do it, but that's out there on how to work or how to think or learn or process when you have like um, different things like ADD or ADHD or whatever it is. There's just different ways of learning than mainstream learning. And so mainstream isn't for everybody. But I'm still of the adage that normal doesn't really exist and neither does average, because I like math. And if you do math and you put the average together, you're basically taking multiple numbers, you're adding them all up together and then dividing them by the number of numbers you put together. So if you put 100 numbers together, you add them all up and you get like 1,000,000. You divide that by 100 and you get like 1,000. And you're like, okay, so 1,000 is the average of the 100 numbers. but what were most of the numbers? I mean, were more of them above 1,000? Were more of them below 1,000? I mean, it's an average number. And I think the average person, like, I always thought it was weird that when they would say the average family it has like 2.5 children, because they do a little number and it's like 2.5. And I was like, you can't have half a child unless the average family is walking around with someone pregnant with the third child all the time. But then she would eventually have the third child. So wouldn't the average be 2 or 3? How could it be half? That doesn't actually exist unless half the population, or the majority, the average majority of population is pregnant. But then they will have a third child, most likely, unless, there's a miscarriage or something else happens, they will have a third child. So then the average would be 3, not 2.5. But they're like, it's 2.5. So growing up hearing things like that, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And things need to make sense to me. So I like when I hear things that make sense to me. Whether I have attention deficit disorder or not, I don't know, but it makes sense to me. And I'm like, oh, that explains things to me. And when things get explained and make sense, then I feel less crazy. I feel a little bit more, I guess, on the normal side, or like all the other crazy people in the world. I don't know. But I feel like there's an explanation, and that it's not something that I have to beat myself up over, or it's not something that I have to try to overcome or change, because that's not something I can change. It's something I can learn how to live with. It's something that I can accept, that this is just how I am, and this is how I process things, and this is what I do. And maybe it's because I have this attention deficit disorder that I have to do multiple things at a time. But then it allows me to be more gentle with myself, to accept myself for the way that I am, and to be like, okay, so now I know this is why I do what I do, and that's okay. And so sometimes I think for me, if I understand why I do what I do, it either gives me the option to be like, okay, so this is why I do it, so now I have the underlying reason so I can change it, or this is why I do it. And then I'm like, okay, now that makes sense, and I'm okay with what I'm doing, and I know why but now I have an explanation for other people that get irritated with why I do things. I don't know if that's the explanation for anyone watching these videos. And like I said, I haven't been to a doctor. I've not been officially diagnosed with any of that. I'm just saying I have things that I do match up with stuff that my sister posts about it, and other people in my family have it. And talking to my little sister, she was saying that she's not very good at multitasking, and that it's been a hindrance in her life to try to do things the way that our mom did things, because she can't do multiple things at once. She has to focus on one thing at a time. And I struggle to focus on one thing at a time. I struggle to tell my brain, this is what I'm doing, and I'm focused on it. I struggle to live in the moment, to stay in the moment, because I'm like one of those people, or like dogs or whatever, where it's like, squirrel, ooh, something new, okay, and I'm totally distracted. Like, my brain has gone somewhere else entirely. And then I'm like, wait, what was I talking about again? Like, it's gone. And I will just randomly say something and then go right back to whatever the conversation is. And I know I'm not as extreme as other people that I know. Like, my adopted dad is like that. And sometimes I don't think he ever comes back to the point where he was at, because he's like, squirrel, new conversation. And what was the rest of the story you started with? And my mind wants to know the end. It wants to know the answer, so that I have to wait and ask him to redirect and be like, and the rest of the story. And sometimes the stories I've heard multiple times, because he repeats things, and then I'm like, I'm good, I've heard that story before. Go ahead with whatever your new tangent is, I'm fine. So, but that's how my brain works. I also like to know the end, the start, and finish. I don't like to be left hanging. It's kind of fun when I write to kind of leave a hook or leave people hanging, but I don't particularly like when it happens to me. So it's kind of one of those, I can't think of what it is, double standards. There we go. It's double standard. Very good with the double standards. I think most people are. But I'm learning. Surprises are okay or fun. I'm not a huge fan of surprises, though. I like my stability, things like that. I think I'm probably more OCD than I am ADD. Not that I'm very OCD either. I just, I don't know. I just don't like change, which is weird because I'm always doing things that incorporate change because I like things to be new and different. I can't stagnate somewhere. So I'm very, um, I don't know. I feel like I'm an optical illusion. I've always said that about myself. Like I'm an optical illusion because what you see is not necessarily what is going on inside of me. Or people look at me like, "Oh, this is your size of clothes," and I'm like, "Nope, that's not what my size is. That's not who I am. That's not." Um, but maybe I'm not as much of an optical illusion as I think I am. Maybe I just keep looking into one of those funhouse mirrors, so I see a distorted version of myself. And doing this writing and these videos helps me to see a clearer vision of myself. And talking to my sister and talking about ADHD and things like that just kind of was like, I don't know, it's like another piece of the puzzle in my life, whether I have that or not. I grew up with a mother that did. And so I have developed or learned to do things in a certain way because that's how she did them, because that was her. And it's fine for me to multitask. It's fine for me to do those things. Those are things that I've developed, which I think are good qualities. But I did it because my mother did it. And my younger sister has learned as an adult that she can't do that. So she's having to unlearn things and do things differently because she doesn't have ADD or ADHD. So she can't function that way. And I may or may not have it, but I have a lot of habits that people have with that, or I've learned a lot of skills to function like someone that has that because that's what I was taught growing up. So it kind of it gets me to a different funhouse mirror, one that's a little bit closer to what I actually look like. So I'm not as much of an optical illusion as I think that I am, because it fills in another puzzle piece. It straightens out a little bit of that mirror for me so I can see myself a little bit more clearly. So regardless of whether I have it or not, I have character traits from that because I was trained that way. I was brought up that way because I have had a mother that had ADHD and she could not sit still. She was always like shaking her legs, always doing different things. She was always sewing and cooking and doing things in the kitchen. She was always, on the phone and typing and whatever it was. She always had multiple things that she was doing. She always considered herself an organized mess because she knew where everything was, but it was like, in piles and whatever. I got that from her too. I don't always know where everything is. Most of the time I do, but not always. But it's all in piles and messes. So it was just kind of an interesting thing, I guess, to share in my video about myself, to see myself in a new light, a different way, and and that makes me grateful. Got to throw in my little gratitudes there too, to have a new perspective on myself and my life and the reasons why I struggle with some things or why I do things a certain way that I do them. And maybe if I don't have ADHD or attention deficit disorder, then maybe that's part of my struggle, is that I've been trained to do all of that. So it's the process of untraining my brain to train it to do something different. That would probably require some kind of like actual diagnosis and testing and all of that stuff that I am not going to do. But I don't have the money to do it. I might someday do that. But it does at least give me some insight into why I do things a certain way, and that I'm not the only person that does them that way, and that it's okay. So they're not things that I necessarily have to root out or get rid of, not necessarily default settings that are horrible, just helps me to understand why they're that way, and that if that works for me, that I can continue to do that. And if it doesn't work for me, then I know I have an idea as to what things I can do to change them. So for now, I think my brain still likes to do multiple things and go multiple places and bounce around to different things because I know I get bored quite easily and I don't like to be bored with things. So if I get bored with one story, I will start working on another story, or I will start doing different projects. I will find things to entertain myself, and I will avoid doing things that I don't find entertaining, which is probably why I'm doing my video, because I'm avoiding going to work tonight. Um, but I do need to go to work, and I am grateful that I can go to work. I'm grateful I already did my writing and my video, so those are two less things that I have to do when I get home from work tonight. So yay for that. And I'm grateful for my fun little exercise ball, which I hope is not driving people in the video crazy because I keep moving around on it. And I really want to just bounce up and down, but I'm not doing that. It does, not only help with exercising and giving me sore tummy muscles, but it's fun. It's kind of fun. And since I don't do a whole lot of exercising and other things, I think this is at least a good place to start doing a little bit of moving around and being a little bit more active, because that would be beneficial for me too. So yay, which is why I say I don't have the hyperactivity part of this, except that I talk all the time. I don't know if that's considered hyperactivity or not. But anyway, I'm sure my ramblings are either entertaining or annoying to whomever may be watching these videos. And maybe you have ADHD and you totally understand what I'm talking about, or maybe you know people that do and it's like, oh yeah, she totally has that, or no, she doesn't, but she's totally crazy anyway. Doesn't matter. If you like these videos, you can hit like, subscribe, you can share to someone else if you think they'll find it entertaining, and I hope you have a great day full of gratitude and maybe do some writing.